So it's been like almost 3 years since OpenAI released their model, and since then there has been a lot of speculation. What is going to happen to jobs, especially software engineering jobs? I think after 3 years, seeing the capabilities and the growth rate, we can have a probably better guesstimate on what is going to happen. So I work in Azure. I work on services that they probably get 1 billion requests a day. There are microservices. There's multiple repositories. Each has their own requirements, like to get access. And for us to work on a feature, we might need to work on multiple repositories. There's a specific tool to get logs. There's different requirements to be able to to do testing in different environments. So it's just way more complex than how you work with Cursor to build like a small project, right? So I want to give my perspective as someone who is aware of the complexity of big tech technology and how they are building stuff, and also as someone who also uses AI for side projects, and I'm very well aware of the capabilities when it comes to especially smaller projects. So this is kind of a simplified hierarchy for small and medium companies, and this is more big tech companies. And I want to talk to you guys about what is going to be the role of software engineers in near future for the probably next 10 to 20 years. When I say 10 to 20 years, I just want you to be aware that since neural network, they got introduced first till we got transformers, it has been probably more than 50 years. So there is some limitation, and until we come up with those innovations that resolves those limitations, like we don't know how long that will take. Probably 10 years, probably 20 years, and it's just that it doesn't matter. I think you just can't rely on how soon we're going to get to a point that we will get universal income, for example. And it just doesn't matter. I think it's just not worth even thinking about it. But for now, from what I see, is when it comes to smaller companies, especially when founders is like a tech founder and is able to build a product with, for example, Cursor or just use ChatGPT, they can get to a product and even make money, just 1% or 2%. But after some time, a founder needs to do CEO job, meaning you need to go and talk to customers. You need to see what future features you want to have, and basically do more researching than debugging and prompting and coding. So for that founder at that stage, they need a software engineer. Now I put debugger here just to be more specific what mostly the roles of software engineers are going to be, especially more junior to mid-level engineers. So that founder needs a software engineer. So he or she can tell the software engineer that I think we need this feature, and that person is going to start prompting until they have that feature, and is going to proofread the code, right? If there's any inefficiency they can find, and also do debugging, because usually you probably need a lot of debugging because there's always problems. So that is the debugger, right? That's the stage. Now, when you go to more mid-sized company, you need a more experienced person, which I call a software architect. For example, the problem with LLMs are they are not very, they don't argue with your assumptions. They don't do critical thinking. For example, when I was at General Motors, as a front-end engineer, I believed GraphQL could be very useful for the backend. But the backend architect, he didn't agree because he didn't want to risk, and this is 5 years ago, so he didn't want to risk using a new technology, and he believed that there are not many engineers that are familiar with GraphQL, and he didn't want to waste time learning it. So if you tell ChatGPT, what should I do for my backend? It will tell you, well, maybe set up use Java. And then if you tell it, okay, well, wouldn't GraphQL make sense here? And probably it will tell you, well, that's a genius idea. Yes, GraphQL absolutely makes sense. And if you say, okay, well, GraphQL is kind of new, it has maybe these issues, it might be kind of over engineering, and it will tell you, well, that is also a good idea, right? So it doesn't argue with you. So whatever you say, it will say is a good idea, unless it's clearly a bad idea. So that's where software architect come into play. a more experienced person, where it's like the stakes are high right now. We're talking about, for example, General Motors, that they are building a product that big companies are going to use it. So it's like a branding thing, right? They don't want to mess up or be very slow or inefficient. So that's the job of the software architect, as an experienced person, to come up with a system. Now, that software architect probably needs also software engineers, or that they can do that prompting, right? And it can assign those tasks so everyone can work on their part and do the prompting, build the product, make sure the code is correct, and whenever there's issues, they can do debugging. Now, when it comes to bigger companies, let's say, for example, Microsoft. There's a lot of products, right? Maybe within Microsoft we have 100 smaller organizations. Like, think about Xbox, LinkedIn, GitHub. So for bigger companies, now we'll have product managers and engineering managers, which basically they will be the CEO for a smaller part of organization, and then they will respond to CEO, how their growth is going and what are the issues and how many people they need to hire, right? That's what it is. Now, bigger companies that they do complex things, there is another category of engineers that they do the innovation part, they do the invention, right? Let's talk about, for example, they are basically the differentiator of them with the competition. Think about those engineers that they differentiated Google search with, let's say, Bing, or Google Map with other maps. So they're responsible to come up with those logics that make their software better. And usually in big tech companies, they are usually tagged as distinguished engineer or partner. And then the rest are the same. PM, engineering manager. Think about that CEO for a smaller company, and then the rest of it is the same. Because usually, for example, PM in like responsible for maybe load balancer and VPN in Azure now needs one or two software architects, which they're the staff engineers or senior engineers, that they can come up with the designs. And then those junior engineers or mid-level engineers will be the debuggers. Now it's pretty much the same, right? The roles are still, the hierarchy is the same, but I'm defining it in the age of AI, how responsibilities change a little bit, and what, as someone that uses AI, is going to work on. So you still, as a mid-level, you still can do prompting, right? But you're responsible to make sure the code is clear and sufficient. And if there's any issues, software architect is not going to have time to do debugging, right? You will be the person to do the debugging. Even in a startup, if it is making some money, founder shouldn't do the debugging. He shouldn't spend one day fixing a bug, right? Unless you're very early on, and it's just not worth paying money, for example, for a software engineer. The only issue and the only difference here is that now companies, they expect even their junior software engineers to have experience, or at least somehow in their resume they can show their expertise. Because look, even as a software engineer / debugger, in order for you to know the output of the code that you prompted is high quality code, you need to be a good software engineer, right? So, and the problem is, you need to show, when you want to get hired, in your resume, you need to show that you are a good software engineer. And one way is have a good resume, a project that you have worked on that you can show that capabilities. Another way would be good school. So I think it's still going to a good school helps. Going to bad school, probably nowadays, being that this market is very competitive, probably bad school, it won't help much, and you need to compensate for that. And in order to compensate, you need to do some really cool projects that you can show you have the skills. I think when it comes to interviewing, it still will be the same with a small change. For big tech companies, they might still continue with lead code and system design. The only difference is they might ask for the interview to happen on site, or maybe even if it's virtual, they might use a specific software. Now they might require you to download a specific software to minimize the chance of you being able to cheat. The reason I think lead code and system design still will be there, because in the age of AI, it actually makes more sense. Because coding is not that valuable anymore. What is valuable is your decision makings. You be able to come up with an optimized solution. You understand different time complexity. You understand where to use a data structure. Because I have seen this a lot, even with the latest models, that when you prompt for ChatGPT to do something, it will do it for you. But when you read through the code, you see that it used n to the power of 2 time complexity, that it could have easily been a linear. So unless I see that and I realize it, and then I go and say, okay, well, how about instead of looping twice through an array of 2D, how about you make it flat and use a set, for example, right, to make it linear, which makes sense, but it just doesn't do it. Like ChatGPT, most of the time, especially if it's a bigger or little complex code, it doesn't default to the most optimized solution. So yeah, that's what I think lead code and system design still can be used. But the other side, the companies that they do assignments, I think the difference would be, it's going to be the same, except I think they will ask you actually to use ChatGPT, but to share your prompts. Because I don't think company for their assignments should require you to not use ChatGPT, because the whole point is for them to know actually that you know how to use LLMs to be more productive, especially with the smaller companies. I think that's more important. So I think in future, in a very soon future, companies are going to realize that, and they're going to come up with requirements, an app that they want, but ask you that if you're using ChatGPT, share your prompts, and that way they can see your prompt and how many iterations you go, and if you understand the output has been good or not, and if it hasn't been good or efficient, you asked ChatGPT to make it, you give instruction to make it more efficient. Also, another thing that engineers are going to be tested is their taste in design. In fact, 5 years ago, my interview with General Motors was, there was a requirement for a dashboard to show some metrics, but there wasn't any requirement how the UI to look like. So I think even 5 years ago, the assignment was in a way that they could test my taste in design, also test how I do my code, how clean is the code, and how I come up with my logic and how I write my logic. The difference was there wasn't any ChatGPT and prompts to share, right? But I think now the requirements would be to share the prompts, because that's the whole point. You should use ChatGPT because the company should encourage you to do it, because they want you to work, your output to be as much as 5 developers. Like, that's the whole point. Now, with that being said, so how do you get a job now or even in future? I think, as I said, even if you're fresh out of school, you need to have a good resume. You need to show somehow you have those skills. You understand efficiency, you understand systems. If you're saying, backend, you understand what is a efficient backend. So build a strong portfolio can happen in different ways. One is you do a project. Another one is contributing to open source. If you don't have any idea, I think the best way is contributing to open source, because you can show your depth of knowledge and learn a lot. Because when you are contributing to open source, especially big projects, people with a lot of expertise, they're going to review your PR, so you're going to get a lot of good feedback. And you don't need to have an idea of your own. You can just contribute there, any open source that you also use. And that also, so that will show the companies that you have expertise in some area because you contributed to that project, and they can see your work, right? Another one is building project. That one probably you need to come up with your own ideas. And then visibility. So if you have a great resume and you kind of don't show it, if you have a great resume, somehow people need to know, right? So I'll talk about these two more. So again, as I said, building real projects is, one is your own idea. Another one is just if you got internship, right? So internship is very important nowadays. That way you can show your skills. Another one, if none of those, then you have also the opportunity to contribute open source. I think that's also a great way. I also want to add a website called TechX, which they have they have like really good projects, and they have mentors from big tech companies with expertise in the area. Depends on your project that you pick, and they they have Scrum meetings with you and other people, and they assign tasks. So they take care of that part for you. They take care of the idea for you, and you're going to work on cool stuff, and then you can put in your resume. Also, I wanted to just show this is a screenshot of one of the requirements from one company, but these are very common questions that companies usually ask. So if you see it says open source projects where you are the main initiator or you are a core contributor. So that is why I think even if you have good projects that you work on, I think having some contribution to open source can give you an edge. And then a project, right, a product, a real product you have built. Now that can be either your own or let me also add this. If you don't have any idea, you can go to TechX and they already have the project for you, and they will assign the task to you and others, and you are in an environment of like a team. So it's really like stimulating a real job. So yeah. So this would be how you can build your resume, right? And how you can show that you have those knowledge and expertise to become software engineer / debugger if you're just starting. Now, if you want to be a software architect, then it definitely need to be actual work experiences, and you need to be very detailed on what are the things you have done. So that just comes with a lot of experience. Another one I wanted to talk, it was about that visibility, right? So first it starts with resume. I think resume is very clear for a lot of people what format they use. I see a lot of junior engineers, they have 2 or 3 pages. I think you should limit it to 1. So here's what happens, right? When I have positions that I want to pick someone for interviewing, recruiters, they send me like 200 resumes, and I pretty much, I mean, the thing is, I'm also busy with my own work, right? So at some point, you get to a point that you just can spend 5 to 10 seconds to see if a resume can be filtered to the other section, and if it's a potential to interview. So 5 to 10 seconds. If you are a junior engineer, how can you have 2 or 3 pages? Doesn't make sense. So make it 1 page. This is usually the standard format, and I personally highlight or make it bold the technologies and the output and the result and the decisions I have made. The reason is, as I said, it's 5 to 10 seconds, right? And your eye will see those bold sections. So if you read through it quickly, you will see those bold sections. So that probably helps for the engineering manager or recruiter to get an idea of what are the technologies I have used. And the way I format my resume, I think is just basically that standard that helps to get interview is what technology I used, what problem I solved, and what was the output compared to current way that was happening. And that helps, right? Let's say you're applying for backend, and let's say, for example, instead of locking the database, you used a queue and Redis, and with some sort of design, you were able to still make a support for concurrent transactions without locking the database, and that just made your backend faster, like 10% faster or 20% faster. Now, if I, as an engineering manager, see that, I mean, you are definitely a good candidate for backend to at least get interview. So that comes to resume. I think is like the basic part, and everyone needs to get this right. But I still get a lot of resume that are not well formatted. The next is after resume is visibility. So if you have applied for jobs, you know that one of the questions they ask is whether you have a GitHub. So GitHub also, you can create a homepage. So here pretty much whatever I have in my resume, I also have it in my GitHub. So everyone goes there, or they find me via Twitter, or when I contribute open source, they can also see my work. Another one is LinkedIn. So you want to also be very detailed in LinkedIn, because I think not 90, maybe 80% of reach outs from recruiters is basically LinkedIn suggestions based on these keywords that I have in my work experience. So probably is it has the highest ROI, LinkedIn descriptions. Like definitely worth going through it, making sure you get that part right. So that's the visibility part. The other part is networking. So a lot of people, they complain that on their LinkedIn, people post that, I don't know, they got a job or they got a certificate. The thing is, let me show you a screenshot of how my LinkedIn look like. I have engineers posting the jobs that they're looking for to hire people, either engineering managers or recruiters. So this is how you want to network. This is how you want to build your connections on LinkedIn. You don't want, that's the whole point of LinkedIn, okay? So when you go to your LinkedIn, mostly it should be engineering managers, mostly posting the jobs that they have opened, and recruiters. Another way is when you search for companies, there is a actively hiring button. And that's how I have built my connection. I go to actively hiring, and then I just start connecting with everyone or following them. You don't have to connect, you can just follow them. So that way I connect with people that are mostly either recruiters or hiring managers. So one thing I want to mention is when a job is posted, after probably a day, this is what I've realized myself, after probably a day, there is thousands of applications in just one day. And what happens is companies just stop accepting, and they just get that 1,000, and maybe they let the job still be open, but you're probably just wasting your time because they have already got that 1,000 application. And usually they find your candidate within that 1,000 application. So that is why it's very important to get your LinkedIn right, because when hiring managers, they post, you are probably the first person or first few people that are getting exposed to that job position. In fact, I don't have the screenshot for it, but just a couple of days ago, one of the hiring managers from one of the big tech companies, it shared a position, and it said that the description for the job is in progress. So the job wasn't even posted, but the hiring manager already talked about it and said, if you're interested, just DM me. So, I mean, that's why it's very important, your connections. Another thing is, when you apply to jobs that they are posted by recruiters and hiring managers, they are mostly real jobs. But when you apply jobs through companies' websites, they are most likely ghost jobs or fake jobs. And unfortunately, I don't know, for whatever reasons, companies do that a lot. So there's a lot of value in doing your LinkedIn right. One is the jobs are going to be real. Second is you want to be one of the first people that are applying. So if you have great skill, you have great resume, it's not enough, right? You want to also be one of the first that apply to that job. Another one is being creative also helps, right? I saw this Twitter from Gabriel. Never compete with applying for jobs. There are hundreds of applicants with better grades than universities, but none of them will be making a personalized demo. So he created a video demo, and he's right now working at OpenAI. So, if you can come up with creative ways of, if none of the things I talked about worked, it doesn't hurt to be creative and come up with some ideas that differentiate you from other candidates. I personally haven't done this. The way it has worked for me, I don't call it creative, but the way I differentiate myself from others is I directly reach out to hiring managers in LinkedIn. And I think out of 200 DMs I sent, at least one hiring manager from a big tech company has responded to me. So you can see here, I send a resume, and then they ask, to talk about more about my role at Microsoft. So this has been at least sufficient for me. I never needed to. Maybe I should do that next. Maybe when I'm DMing people, I can create a video to even go a little further with the creativity. But that has been working. I think 200 DMs is not much, and being able to get response from all the big 10 companies that I like to work is not that bad. So yeah, build your resume. You need to have a way to show your skills. Probably it's going to be through work experience and projects. If you don't have work experience and if you don't have any project idea, there's open source for you. So that shouldn't be an excuse. There's open source, and you're going to learn a lot. You're going to build up your GitHub just by contributing in other people's idea. And there are also people get hired through open source contribution, because there are companies that either they're open source or one part of it is open source. And when you contribute, especially if it's a mid-sized or small company, the manager or the CEO might notice your name, and after some time, they see you're doing good work. If they have position available, you will be the first they will reach out. Yeah, so resume, right? And then you have to do whatever you can for your skills to be visible. I talked about LinkedIn, right? Your connections, how to make it. Some creative ways you can even further differentiate yourself from others. Yeah, I think I covered most of the things that it can help people. But I would appreciate if if you know something that I missed or it has worked for you, you can comment. And then maybe if there's a lot of different cool ways that can help people, I can make another video.